Megovan and Melen, Yoistin here, and I'd like to welcome you all back to our History of Arda series, where we explore the timeline of Tolkien's works. Last time, we discussed the creation of Arda and Middle-earth. Today, we're going to discuss the Two Trees of Valinor and the events surrounding them, and we'll also come to know the first ancestor of the White Tree of Gondor. I'll leave a link to the first video in this series in the description below, as it will help with what we're discussing here today. After the creation of Arda, but before Melkor's first assault against the Valar, the Ainur, the beings who had helped sing the universe into creation, had already started to enter the world from Ilúvatar's halls. Varda, or Elbereth as she would later be called, created the Elder Stars as the only source of light in the world. These would be the only pieces to emit light until the two lamps of Valinor are created. After the first war with the Valar, Melkor's spirit dispersed into the world. This is called Arda Mard, and with Melkor's spirit now affecting the world, and the children of Ilúvatar directly, evils that did not exist before are infused into the world itself. Plagues, the fading of the elves into spirits, and other concepts began because of Melkor's loss in the first war with the Valar. However, Melkor was defeated for now, and he retreated into the void beyond the world. When Tulkas, the champion of the Valar, came into the world, that age after Ainulindale, or the first music of the Ainur, ended, and the years of the lamps began. These two lamps were named Iluin, meaning sky blue, and Ormal, meaning high gold, and they were the first true givers of light in Arda before the Two Trees of Valinor. Manwë and his wife Varda had created and lit these two lamps. Iluin, that acted like the moon, was set upon the pillar of Helkar, and Ormal, that acted as the sun, was set in the deepest south upon Ringol. Together, these two lamps lit Middle-earth. Where the light met is where the Valar originally dwelt after the creation of the world, upon the Isle of Almaren. This island was set in the middle of the world, and eventually wildlife and nature came to live there. In this first peace that was felt in the universe, Melkor came out of the void, with rebel Maiar that became his servants. These were the Balrogs and Sauron. In secret, Melkor created Utumno and Angband in the far north of Middle-earth. The peace of the Valar was interrupted by these beings, as Melkor destroyed the two lamps and broke the lands, destroying the island of the Valar. Thus Melkor brought an end to the first two lights of Middle-earth. Where the lake and the island were would become the Sea of Helkar, where Cuiviénen, the first land of the elves, would be. The Valar fled to Aman, while Melkor ruled Middle-earth for this short while. In their retreat, Valinor was established as the realm of the Valar. However, the entire world was left in the dark, so the Two Trees of the Valar were created by the Song of Yavanna, the Vala of the earth and nature. They were named Laurelin, the golden tree, who was female, and Telperion, the silver tree, who was male. Once again, this is very similar to the sun and the moon, as the two trees were actually the sun and the moon's ancestors. These sat upon the hill Izelohar, located just outside of Valimar, the capital city of Valinor. The two trees grew in the presence of the Valar, and they were watered by the tears of Nienna, the saddest of the Ainur. These two trees would increase and diminish in light during a 12-hour cycle that was considered day and night. Thus, a new age, the years of the trees, began, and this is truly the age that would produce the greatest of miracles and the most divine creatures. As this video is primarily a continuation of the timeline of Arda, I will summarize the events of this age and focus mostly on the Two Trees of Valinor. But if you would like me to return in the future to make more in-depth videos about these subjects, I would be glad to. Near the beginning of this age, the dwarves and the Ents are created, though the dwarves are made to sleep until Ilúvatar's firstborn, the elves, awake. Some years later, Varda gathers the light of the Two Trees of the Valar to make the great stars and the sickle of the Valar in the north, as a challenge to Melkor. These stars would provide light around the world, even in the places far away from the Two Trees of the Valar. Finally, the first race of beings, the elves, are awoken in Cuiviénen, a place near where the first island of the Valar was, in the far east of Middle-earth. They awoke beneath Varda's stars, and so They loved them and her the most. They would name her Elbereth and sing songs about her in future ages. After they were awoken, Melkor began capturing the elves and perverting them into orcs. However, Melkor himself was captured and imprisoned by the Valar when they destroyed Utumno, while Sauron continued to serve him in Angband. Arome, the hunter of the Valar, found the elves, and took 3 of them to be ambassadors to the Valar after spending much time with them. The 3 elven ambassadors were Ingwe of the Vanyar, Finwë of the Noldor, and Elwë of the Teleri. These elves were entranced by the Valar and the light of the Two Trees. Thus, the 2 parties decided that the Eldar would live in Valinor with the Valar. The great journey of the elves begins, though not all of the elves make it to Valinor from Cuivanian, as some of the Teleri break off from the group because their leader, Elwë, or Thingol as he is later known, beholds and falls in love with Melion, whose line would create Luthien and eventually Aragorn and Arwen. The separation of the Eldar was known as the Sundering of the Elves. However, most of the elves do make it to Valinor, and those who do see the beauty of the Two Trees, and they are forever changed. In later times, the elves would be divided between the Calaquendi, who had seen the light of the Two Trees, and the Moraquendi, who had not. The former group was considered superior, and they were named the Light Elves, or the High Elves, whereas the latter were considered the inferior Dark Elves. Finwë, one of the first ambassadors of the elves to the Valar, had a son with Miriel named Feanor. In the birth process, Feanor's spirit killed his mother, and Finwë mourned for her. Feanor is the elf that would change the course of history in Tolkien's works, for better or for worse. Some other renowned elves are also born during the Years of the Trees, such as Luthien, Fingolfin, Galadriel, and others. During his life, Feanor would take some of the light from the Two Trees and create the 3 silmarils, stones that emit pure, unfettered light. Using Feanor's ambition, Melkor, who was released from his imprisonment many years after making the first orcs, deceives Feanor and gets him banished from his home of Tirion, the city of the Noldor. And so, Feanor hates Melkor already, but as we shall see, it'll get far worse. During a festival in the later years of the Two Trees, as this age takes place over many thousands of years, Feanor is invited to Valimar by King Manwë to make amends with the elf, and Melkor allies himself with Ungoliant the Spider, and destroys the Two Trees of Valinor. Melkor stabs the trees while Ungoliant eats their sap and drinks the tears of Nienna. After this, Melkor kills Feanor's father Finwë, and steals the 3 silmarils. Then he retreats towards Beleriand in the east. From here, we see the Eldar follow Feanor and his hatred for both the Valar and Melkor, but that is a topic for the next video in this series. The Two Trees of Valinor, like other pieces of Tolkien's works, are relics of majesty and beauty that are fouled by those with evil intentions. Luckily, the Valar had saved a flower and a fruit that Yavanna and Nienna created the sun and the moon with. In future days, the Two Trees would stand as a symbol of divinity under their children, the sun and the moon. The Doors of Durin that would come to protect the west wall of Moria has 2 trees imprinted on them in such symbolism. As for the White Tree of Gondor, a look-alike tree was made in Telparion's image, though it lacked the light of Telparion. It was named Galathilion and placed in Tirion. Its descendant was Celeborn, the Tree of Erisea, and then Nimloth of Numenor, onto the White Trees of Gondor in the 3rd and 4th Ages. The symbol of Telparion came to stand for royalty, furthering Gondor's connection to the sun and moon. Again, this is another sign to respect nature, as its reality is far greater than that which meets the eye. In the next part of this series, we will talk about Feanor and his war on Melkor during the last years of the trees and the early part of the First Age. We will also discuss the awakening of Iluvatar's second-born, the race of men. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this next installment of Arda's history. If you did, please hit that like button and share this video with a friend who you think might enjoy it. The Silmarillion and its events can be very confusing, with all of the names and characters that are involved, but together we shall come to know more about Tolkien's writings. So if you have any questions or comments about the events in this video or at any other point in the timeline of Arda, please just let me know in the comments down below, as I would be happy to help out. If you would like to contact me more directly, please join us on Facebook and Twitter through the links in the description below, and subscribe to join the Men of the West and the Free Peoples of Middle-earth today on our journeys through Arda. In the next few videos, we will be covering Quenya, as well as the Corsairs and Haradrim of Tolkien's works, before jumping right into another poll for future videos. As always, thank you all for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one, my friends.